Hello, everybody. As I'm going deeper into my study of what the future holds for us and how we can all break the career code, I'm thrilled to have with us Apurva Chamaria, Head of Partnership Solutions, Startups and Venture Capital at Google India. He has a stellar track record at Tech Mahindra and RateGain and has driven transformative growth, elevating companies to new heights. His extensive experience spans renowned brands like HCL Technologies and Ranbaxy Laboratories, where he's left an indelible mark on the global landscape. Apurva's accolades speak volumes about his prowess as a marketeer and leader, earning him prestigious titles like Marketeer of the Year and Digital Marketer of the Year from several different organizations. He's also a top angel investor and best selling author. Apurva's insights into digital transformation and growth hacking are unparalleled, and he's going to share his views with us in a range of these subjects. He was also honored by Campaign Asia magazine by being inducted in their 40 under 40 list. Apurva Chamaria, so thrilled to have you here, and what a stellar bio. So proud of all your achievements.
Thank you so much, Vibha, and it's a pleasure to be here having this conversation.
Okay, all right, awesome. So, Apurva, as we get started, and as you know, the book is about the future of work. So, from your vantage point, from where you sit today, why is it important to think about the future? Why does somebody in your role need to think about the future?
See, as investors, as people working with the digital economy, uh, firstly, I wanted to share my personal views, and these views don't represent the views of Google or any other organization I'm associated with. But as a person who's deeply involved with the digital economy, we are basically taking a position on the future. That's what we are investing in. As anybody who works in the digital ecosystem, whether you're supporting companies or investing in them or enabling them, inherently you have a sense of optimism about the future, about how the future is going to shape up, whether it's Gen AI or climate change or SaaS or EdTech, and you're underwriting the future.
Sure.
Uh, right. So, of course, there is a deep interest in how the future will unfold and what's the role the founders who are currently working in the space will have.
Okay, terrific. So, okay, so you're saying it's sort of second nature for investors. Obviously, you take a bet on the future. Hence, understanding the future is sort of by default embedded into your everyday world. Okay. So
Absolutely.
now, as you're sitting here looking at this landscape of India and taking bets on different organizations, what are some of the major themes slash trends that you're seeing from a futuristic perspective? Where are investors shifting to? What sort of companies are you? And what sort of sectors, more importantly, are you looking at?
Sure. So, very, very large sector, not only in India, but globally is fintech. Uh, and fintech includes micro sectors like neobanks, lending, insurtech, wealth tech. And what is driving the interest and the dollars which goes into fintech is the DPI, digital public infrastructure rails which have been built. So these include things like UPI, OSIN, uh, now open commerce, regulatory frameworks like eKYC, FASTag. So there is a lot of digital infrastructure which has gone into building for the last 6 7 years. That's now resulting in a lot of companies which are building on top of these rails. We are seeing a lot of growth in financial inclusion. The regulators are very proactive. So if you see RBI has RBI Innovation Hub, NPCI is a great regulator. They're creating a lot of sandboxes from which digital innovation can come out.
Mhm.
Um, Now, if we talk about the micro sectors, which I think are really exciting when you think
So,
of fintech.
when you're seeing fintech, you're seeing this move largely to ensure that sort of the bottom of India doesn't get left behind. So, is it more inclusive in its thought process, or is it still targeting the elite? Where is this? Where's the fintech sort of? Where's the ball moving to?
I think both are happening. I think the regulators are very conscious that we should have more inclusion with respect to bottom of the pyramid, and that's why micropayments or sachetization of instruments is happening. Uh, Also, the regulator is trying to bring in a lot of transparency as it pertains to various subsectors in fintech. For example, now electronic dematerialization of unsecured and unlisted securities has become mandatory from November last year. So all the startups are now getting their securities replatformed into a demat form, which will increase transparency. Uh, so the regulator is actually trying to both broaden the base and at the same time across sectors make fintech more trustworthy, reduce financial fraud, increase awareness of personal finance, savings, broaden the pyramid. Uh, I think these are sectoral trends which are playing out. For example, if you actually saw the regulator stalls at Global Fintech Festival or at Startup Mahakumbh, you would see the number of new launches which regulatory bodies like NPC are doing to broaden the financial inclusion in India.
Okay. Okay, great. So it does have that component. It,
It
it
does.
is being designed from an inclusive perspective, especially the government aided organizations or the government sponsored organizations.
Absolutely. So the whole Jandan, Aadhaar, and Manirga stack is a
Mm,
effort in that direction,
mm,
where DBT works well. More and more people have access to financing, to lending.
mm. Okay, so now within this space, so inclusivity seems like a theme. What else is shifting in this? Is what sort of, is there some new technologies that are coming into play? Like what is happening if you were to say, look, in the next 5 years or 10 years, this is how it'll shift. What are those shifts that are coming?
I think insurtech is going to be big. We still don't have a lot of Indians who are insured,
Mm,
and uh, there are many policy changes which the government is doing to make sure that people can access health and life insurance more easily, including smaller policies, including coverage of pre-existing conditions. So I think insurtech is going to become really, really big. Right now on insurance, you're largely seeing distribution plays like Policy Bazaar, but you're also going to see plays where insurtech companies will have their own products. So I think that's going to be a big trend, which we should watch out for. Um, I think wealth management, including investment advisory, robo advisory, and personal finance services, are going to be huge. We've seen how incredibly large and successful Zerodha has become, but
mm,
we're going to see more action on robo advisory, more action on savings platforms. See, India is going to move from $2,300 per capita income to about $5,000 per capita income
mm.
in the next 5 7 years. And as it does that, people will either save more, invest more, or spend more.
Okay.
So you're going to see a lot of action around all three spaces.
Mm.
Uh, and India is actually considered a forerunner in fintech globally. So our rails, our quality of founders, the number of startups we have on fintech is very, very high.
Okay. Is there a sustainability theme emerging? Is there a move towards investors wanting to invest in sustainable companies? Is there any component there?
I think all things being equal, investors would prefer a more sustainable company. Some
Hmm.
investors have also built ESG compliance and ESG DD in their regulatory processes.
Wow. Okay.
Uh, but that said, it is not the number one theme.
Okay.
Like in some countries like Nordics and Scandinavia,
Yeah.
people would start every decision with that. I
Hmm.
think we have some way to go.
Hmm.
Uh, LPs and investors in fund expect investors to return top quartile returns. So
Hmm.
that's the leading lens. And
Hmm.
of course, all things being equal, investors would prefer to invest in a sustainable business.
Okay, but thank you for laying it out so factually. It seems like the leading lens is still the ROI, and then the
Yes,
sustainability layer or stack will come after that, if at all, as long as
absolutely.
it doesn't come at the cost of the returns.
Exactly. IRR and DPI is still the leading.
It's still the leading thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And you don't see that really shifting in the short term, like in the next 5 years or so, you don't see some significant shift in this lens.
I would say it's already shifting, but I think we are far away from that being the number one criteria.
Okay. Are you seeing a lot of funds being set up in India that are
I
focused on sustainability? Yes.
There are very few funds in India which are focused on sustainability,
Oh, very few funds, huh?
and actually globally also very few funds.
Hmm.
Yeah. So India has a few. You have Havana Capital. You have a couple of others, um, but you don't have. I would say you don't even have 20 30 funds which are only focused on sustainability.
Okay, wow. Okay. Is there a shift in the way investments will be made? Is there going to be more reliance on technology? Do you see, yourself as an investor or other investors heavily depending on AI models? So, there was this whole algorithmic trading era, and then there were the quant funds that emerged. Are you going to see this really become like a big play, the AI based modular trading?
I think I think investing is a very broad bucket. So you
Mm.
have public markets, you have private markets. In both of them, you have many asset classes. So
Mm.
you have real estate, you have
Sure.
metals, you have commodities. I think there is scope for AI and automation and tech in many of these asset classes. Yeah, in some other asset classes, you still need to uh, do research, like something like founder grit
Mm.
uh, and founder resilience. You
Sure.
can't use AI to right. So I think there is still uh, you can use automation. Investors have been using automation and tech and models for a long time now. Uh, but the core of investing is still understanding of people, understanding of business models, understanding of and taking a call on how will the future play out, which comes from many years of investing experience. Yeah.
Okay. So you don't, you're not, it sounds like you're not banking too much on the AI models sweeping in and taking over.
Not in short term. we
Not,
we're not, at least in unlisted space, which is the startup space. I don't think we'll in the short term start seeing completely algorithmic investing.
okay, you're not seeing it happen. Okay. In India and worldwide, you don't see this as a dramatic shift.
So there have been a couple of models globally, like Social Capital, which was run by Chamath and few others, where they said we are just going to pull out, financial data and a bunch of other data and take investment decisions. That model, unfortunately, hasn't worked very well.
Hmm.
So you still need to layer the human component, ability to see and understand and take a call on how will the future unveil uh, in the unlisted startup venture space.
Okay. So unless it's out of venture space, you're not banking big on it. But in the
Yes.
public market, listed
It's
space,
a lot of work is already happening algorithmically.
a lot of work is happening. Okay.
Yeah.
So something that has sort of a long case history, that's sort of more
which
repetitive,
has more which has more public data.
public
uh,
data. Yes.
yeah, information asymmetry isn't very high.
Okay. Okay. And there's some sort of case history as
Yes,
opposed to a startup where
absolutely,
it's like nobody knows any.
absolutely.
Okay. So in those areas, in certain asset classes, you're seeing that dependence coming through quite strongly.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. Let's go back to the themes you were mentioning. So three big sectors to watch out for. One you mentioned was fintech. What's
Yeah.
the second one?
I would say second very very big sector is, I would say, generative AI.
Hmm.
You're seeing a lot of advances and progress in AI, particularly in natural language processing, machine learning. A lot of cross-industry applications are coming out, including content creation, healthcare, finance, customer service. Startups in Gen AI are now using Gen AI for automating complex tasks, enhancing productivity, creating new forms of value. Uh, some of the micro sectors in Gen AI. So you would have companies which are creating, say, index and vernacular LLM models,
Hmm.
or vertical LLMs aimed towards a particular sector like fintech, edtech,
Hmm.
commerce. Uh, a lot of work happening on the application layer around
Hmm.
media and entertainment. So content creation, AI tools for generating text, images, videos, music. Customer service is an area where you're already seeing a lot of startups finding traction. So inbound, outbound calling, chat, omni-channel,
Okay.
uh,
Basically
and
taking AI and now making it user friendly and saying this is how you can apply it in as
absolutely use
regular
case driven.
use case driven. Yes. Okay.
In India, you're seeing a lot of startups using AI to solve for healthcare problems, like looking at CT scan, MRIs, and helping doctors diagnose it better.
Hmm.
So because of repetitive learning, machine learning, and AI, so a lot of startups doing that. A lot of startups solving for using AI to do robotic surgery, working on that space.
Sure.
So
You're
healthcare
seeing
is,
this. You're seeing
yes,
this around you.
yes.
Okay. So there seems to be like a lot of AI for good, right? Like that seems to be a theme. AI for
Yes,
good in all these sort of spaces you mentioned, healthcare, education, etc. If used sensibly, AI can have very positive ramifications for India and for the world. Where as an investor, obviously you're always looking at the downside. Where could the AI story go wrong? What are some of the inherent risks in this?
I think the inherent risk is if we don't put together a policy framework around AI, which is uh, left loose enough to drive innovation, but at the same time has guardrails which protect users, including synthetic images, which are also called deepfake, uh, which is biases which could creep into data which is used for training, uh, copyright and IP. So I think we need a regulatory framework which allows consumers and users and citizens to benefit from the incredible advances which AI is making, but
Hmm.
at the same time has guardrails which are very, very inherently core.
Hmm.
Like in financial services, we have KYC, which is a guardrail. So,
Hmm.
what is the equivalent which we are building for data, which goes into training
Hmm.
models? Stuff like that is something. Cultural biases creeping into AI model, religious biases. So, those are the kind of things which are going to be very important to truly unlock the value of AI.
Hmm.
At the same time, you don't want to make it so prohibitive from a regulatory perspective that young startups can't build on AI, thereby resulting in loss of velocity of
Traditional.
innovation.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So that's all. That's the sort of seesaw that we're sitting on.
Absolutely.
Okay. Too much policy versus lack of innovation, and then finding the
Yeah.
sweet spot over
Finding the
there.
sweet spot.
Okay.
And I'm very confident that governments in India and other countries will find and everybody in the world is looking at India. India is one of the most forward policymakers which are working on it. So hopefully after the election, you will see a lot of action on this front.
Okay, so you're optimistic about this
Yes.
space. Okay, I'm always curious to understand with this whole data play, and then the legalities around who owns data, because the data gets generated somewhere, is stored in a data center in another country, and then it has to transcend all these global borders, and then it comes here, let's say to a consumer sitting in Chhattisgarh. So now, is it the Chhattisgarh government? Is it the Indian government? Is it the government that stored the data, or is it where the data was originally originating from? Like where does where do the data borders sort of start forming, and where do they get blurry? Is always something I'm curious to understand as an outsider.
I think when you look at data, you should look at what kind of data it is.
Hmm.
So if it is PII, personally identifiable information, it's a very, very sensitive data
Hmm.
because this allows a product, service, technology platform to identify an individual. There, most governments want to err on the side of caution. So they don't want PII to leave the borders. Uh, they also want to err on the side of caution by giving individuals and allowing platforms and enabling and encouraging platforms to request for permission. And a
Hmm.
permission, if given, should not be given in perpetuity. So most of the governments want the platform to purge the data and ask for permission after every 6 months.
Hmm.
If the data is around healthcare, financial services, local data storage becomes very important in the
Hmm.
country of residency of data. At the same time, if it is data which is to do with machines or logs, error logs, or IOMT data, then of course it is far relatively easier to move data around. Uh, and I don't think we have a perfect answer yet. There is a lot of regulation coming around. So
Hmm.
GDPR came in. India is working on a data protection bill. I think
Hmm.
there is a lot of regulation we will see, and before we move to a well understood homogenized solution.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. And then, in this sort of data heavy world, there are few companies globally that own today large chunks of all our data, right? And we know these organizations. Now, in the future, are these organizations going to be then either are they going to essentially remain the monopolies that they are? Or will the governments come in and say, wait a minute, this data is now no longer yours? You have to give open access to the data and then sort of send a flurry down, and then destroy/reduce the monopolistic powers of these organizations. So which scenario do you see as more uh,
So
realistic?
I'll recuse myself from this question,
Okay,
Vibha.
you want to? Okay, fine, Josh. Okay, no problem. Okay, I want to just get your opinion on what you might see, but I think you might have too much information to answer this question, so we'll let that go. Okay, so let's take a third area. So you talk about fintech, you talk about generative AI. Let's take a third area.
So one of the areas which I think a lot of work needs to happen. So I've told you two areas where a lot of work is happening.
Sure,
Now
sure.
let me tell you a area where a lot of work needs to happen. I think in India and many other countries around the world, healthcare is a problem which has still not been completely solved for. Like, think about it. We say roti, kapda, makan. Uske baad we jump to roti, kapda, makan, Wi-Fi.
Hmm.
So you'll see a lot of people in India and other places around the world entertaining themselves, watching content. But what about roti, kapda, makan, healthcare?
Hmm.
So it's almost like a fundamental right. So I think a lot of work uh, should happen, and we have funds now working in this space around healthcare accessibility. And accessibility not only means availability, it also means affordability at a very high quality.
Hmm.
Just because it is accessible does
Hmm.
not mean it does not, like, because it is healthcare, we also want affordability and high quality.
Okay, sure.
And we have seen some models in India.
Hmm.
Well, Shankar Netrale does a lot of cataract surgeries and eye surgeries in 8 minutes every surgery, and very in a very affordable manner. We've seen the example of Jaipur foot come out of Jaipur. But we want India to do more in low cost vaccines, but we want India and Indian entrepreneurs to do far more work around accessibility, quality, and affordability in healthcare.
Okay.
Uh, Second is AI in healthcare, which I briefly referred to earlier. Third is, if we really want to leverage AI and make healthcare very accessible and affordable, we need a rail which is around digital health records and health management. So we
Hmm.
need solutions built on Ayushman Bharat Health Mission for electronic healthcare records, patient management systems, and health monitoring devices, which are uniformly available, almost like a right, a fundamental right. Uh, Today, we have digital identities for more than 60-70% of Indians.
Hmm.
Can we get to a level where we have digital health records for 60-70% of Indians, which are interoperable with PACS machines, with X-ray machines, with CT scanners, so that people are not lugging around files, losing files, uh, and anytime you go to a doctor or anywhere, they can pull out all your records and use AI to provide you assisted care.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of work needs to be done in that space. Okay. I'm always, first of all, I like your three sector approach a lot because all three that you've identified seem to be very, very grounded in actual need and usage,
Yes,
and transformative in their applications for large parts of global populations. So,
absolutely.
very beautiful thesis, and thank you for laying the three out. Now, for these to happen, we always talk about rich countries and poor countries, rich populations and poor populations. Are you foreseeing a future in which this economic divide moves to a digital divide with, like you're sort of this upper echelon, you understand AI, generative AI, you use these terms every day. Then there's a segment below you, maybe you have some sense of what these technologies mean. And then as you go lower and lower down the population value chain, are you going to see an emerging section of people who have no idea what these technologies are, how to use them? How is that going to pan out? How are you going to be able to educate a population of 1.3 billion and say all of us are on this bandwagon? Otherwise, it's going to lead to yet another economic slash educational divide.
So if we zoom out a little and go beyond the 1.3 million people we have in India,
Billion, yeah.
let's look at the Valerie Perez circle.
Mhm.
So are you familiar with it, or can I tell you a little bit about it?
Please go ahead and share. Yeah.
So if you draw like a round circle like this
Mhm.
around India, uh, more than half of Earth's population lives in this area. And
Mhm.
this circle was popularized in 2013 when a US thinker said Valerie Perez circle is where half of world's population. So it's
Sure.
less than 25-30% of world's area. but more than half of world's population stays there.
Sure.
So if you zoom out and look at that, which is China, India, Indonesia, so this whole 400 million people in India,
Sure.
1.3 in India, 400 in Indonesia, about 1.4 in China, right? Uh, I would see it as a huge opportunity for world leaders, digital thinkers, entrepreneurs like yourself to work on. Uh, and it does not only make economic sense, it also makes a lot of social sense. Uh, right now in India, most startups seem to be optically fighting for the first 35 million people you referred to,
Mm.
which is where credit card penetration, GST, everything is happening, lending.
Mm.
Uh, but if you keep your eyes on where the puck is going and
Mm.
where the ball will be, and
Mm.
as the economy per capita income moves from 1700, 2300 to 5000, beyond 2500, it's all disposable income,
Mm.
which is basically going to come from people beyond 35 million. So expanded to another 3 400 million. Beyond that are still people who are not completely included in the digital economy.
Sure. Sure.
I think India has done an incredible job of handing phones in their hands with cheap bandwidth. Uh, you have many content creators which are creating educational content, but we actually need companies to now create fundamental products which are useful.
Mm.
Like, I'll take an example from consumer products company. So Unilever popularized the concept of sachets.
Mm-hmm.
That 50 paisa humble sachet
Mm.
allowed any person, even in a small place in India,
To use some
without,
shampoo or whatever
right,
it
and
is.
just feel great about themselves.
Sure.
We need the equivalent of that for healthcare, for medical, for wealth tech. Uh,
Mm.
and for that, we will need to build in index and vernacular languages. We will need to build products which are not over engineered. We will need to build products which don't have black spots. So black spots are artificial nudges which encourage people to buy hidden
Mm.
pieces of information on UI. So because these are people who are now starting to use many financial products,
Mm.
we have to win their trust, and we
Mm.
have to make sure that financial misinformation and financial fraud doesn't happen.
Mm.
That's how we will get more and more people to be comfortable to search for, transact on, and trust these online platforms.
Mm. And become
So
part of the larger
become
ecosystem.
part of the larger. And I think earlier, countries, when they wanted to become developed, they used to build massive physical infrastructure,
Mm.
roads, electricity,
Now it's all
power.
digital infrastructure.
Absolutely, which allows us to leapfrog. We
Mm.
don't have to do heavy capex spending, and it's not a either or. We need to build roads, we need to build hospitals, but I think with the right degree of AI and tech tadka on top of it, we can be far more capital efficient.
Okay, okay, awesome. Okay, can we talk about a little on skilling in terms of if there's a young guy you made from high school and he comes up to you and listens to you at a conference, I'm so inspired by you, Apurva. I want to become an investor. What are some of the skills that someone needs to become a successful investor of the future?
I think a very core skill is curiosity and asking questions. For example, you're asking great questions. You have all the hallmarks and the basic of becoming an investor. Just being inherently curious, reading a lot, asking questions, because that's what shapes your mental models.
Hmm.
And you have to be in the present, at the same time reading and thinking a lot about the future. So
Hmm.
that's the basic. On top of that, I think ability to network, build connections. uh, it's a huge market, so how do you get deals? How do you end up working with founders?
Hmm.
uh, that, if you are humble, if you are helpful, that's a soft skill. And then
Okay.
hard skills are things like financial modeling, analytical skills, ability to read term sheets, draft term
So
sheets.
even in the future, you still see all these as like these were like when I was trying to become an investor, everything you said was true.
Yeah.
You think this still rings true?
Yeah, I think a lot of hard skills will get automated and AI driven.
Hmm.
And what will really differentiate the great investors is mindset, temperament, emotional quotient,
Hmm.
likability.
Okay, so
Hard skills, in fact, will get
likability.
automated.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. That's a very interesting one. Okay, now as a kid who wants to become an investor in the future, what would you recommend I study? Like if I'm like, hey, what degree should I get? What should I go study?
I think you should definitely study psychology,
Psychology.
uh,
Okay.
psychology, uh, computer science, um, and personally communication. So
Hmm.
languages and communication.
Okay. So now so the two majors I would go for would be computer science and psych, and
Yeah,
then sort of embedded in that would be some level of.
absolutely.
But now you're
A lot.
recommending a liberal arts plus a STEM subject, and you're saying
Yes.
get both.
Look at both, because the hard knowledge is going to come from, but the differentiator actually is going to be psychology and communication.
Is okay. It's going to be that. Okay. And you talked a little bit about this everyday applications of AI coming through. Have you, if you're able to share from anything that's publicly known in terms of companies that you've invested in or that you know about, uh, can you share a little bit about how, like realistically, in the next 5, 7 years, how will businesses actually work? Like when because when we read about it and when you watch these reels and videos, it's like AI is coming, AI is going to change your world, AI is going to change your life. But like if for the listeners, how really, like everyone's like AI is real, it's everywhere. But in India, at least, you don't see it in so much in your face. Right? Everyone's like, okay, Google Maps runs on AI, sure, but in my everyday working as an entrepreneur, how is my life going to change? What's going to come in terms of sales, and it says like your core business will can be run on AI. How's that going to happen? Can you explain it,
Let me give you a small example.
please? Yeah,
Right now, when you order tests, any kind of diagnostic and clinical test, sorry,
hmm.
I'm going back to healthcare,
Sure,
uh,
sure.
huge subject of passion for me. And somebody comes to take a test, they usually prick, then the test goes. And by the time, if you're in a smaller town, village, hills, where there is no immediate diagnostic lab, by the time it reaches the diagnostic lab, it could be 8, 9, 10 hours long, which makes it very prone to errors, contamination, spoiling, and not to mention expensive and time consuming.
Hmm.
One of the small startups which is doing an incredible work in this field is Neodocs, which
Hmm.
says you can just use your camera phone to take pictures of your skin, a small blood prick, and stuff like that. And we are going to use that to quickly provide you results using AI, because we've looked at thousands and millions of such patterns,
Hmm.
right? Or there are startups which are working on drone delivery for medical samples. So if you're on a small hill on top of Uttarakhand or Himachal, a
Sure.
small drone can fly your samples into, say, Dehradun, which is a regional headquarter. So
Hmm.
healthcare is one. Uh, think of reading, right? A lot of content in India is still around the main languages.
Hmm.
Uh, Way2 News is a Hyderabad based startup which is doing incredible work around regional news.
Hmm.
So it allows any citizen reporter to report locally in the regional language and gives them AI editing tools to help them write, do videos, format, right? Um, think about uh, future employability. Earlier, being a solo entrepreneur was very tough, but effectively, content creators, as we know it, are all solo entrepreneurs largely. There are companies like InVideo. InVideo is doing great, which gives you a co-pilot for creating videos.
Hmm.
Bombay-based startup, Sanket Shah is the founder, quickly gone from 1 million to 38 million. And according to Anderson Horowitz, it's one of the top 50 AI companies in the world in terms of user traction. So I think we are going to see a lot of experiments, enablement around unlocking the true potential of human life, uh, and the future of work as we see it.
Hmm. Okay. Wow. Okay. Great. Great. Very good examples and very sort of applicable in the real world. You talked a little bit about drones and this drone dropping. What are we really going to firstly see in the near future, in the next 5 years? Are we really going to see drones? Sort of buzzing around us, and like, is this going to really become real? Because I know there's a lot of money going into this space right now. One that, and also since we're talking about drones and sort of space, also a little bit of like outer space, are we really going to see hotels? I had an interview with a scientist, and he talked about, of course, you in your lifetime you will be staying at a hotel on the moon. and I don't know, it sounds a bit far-fetched to me, but obviously since you're in the know-how, what is your take on some of this space travel and drone technology?
So I think drones you're definitely going to see a lot of. And when I say drones, these are manned drones, unmanned aerial aircrafts. So the whole space of micro miniaturization of air mobility, you're going to see a lot of action. They're already deployed a lot on defense, perimeter security, rescue missions, reaching unaccessible places. Uh, Government has demarcated zones like green zone, orange zone, red zone. So green zones are where you can file permission, fly
Hmm.
drones. India has a very forward-looking drone policy. So it's creating a lot of micro entrepreneurs who are using drones to spray pesticides in fields, do aerial surveys, do disaster recovery and relief, provide medicines in remote corners of the country. Um, that said, you still don't have a lot of commercial usage on mainstream areas like e-commerce delivery.
Hmm.
But I think we will get to a place where we will have drone ATCs, uh, and
Okay, so
also,
you're optimistic about this space, huh?
very, very,
Very
very.
optimistic. Okay, and on the space travel side?
I think it's not only space travel, but space is a very large sector. So space radars, like synthetic aperture radars in space, which allow you to take photographs of very small places on Earth, use that data to provide better intelligence to farmers on crop patterns,
Hmm.
what should they sow, when they should they sow, when the weather conditions, stuff like that. Uh, there are a lot of rare minerals and metals in space. So
Hmm.
asteroid mining, mining of different planets. Uh, Eventually, maybe finding, like, there was some water found in Mars, droplets. So
Finding some sort
inhabitation
of
is, of
resource.
course,
Hmm.
yes. You're already seeing a lot of rich people now going for space tourism.
Hmm.
But I think we are now in our lifetimes, Vibha, hopefully in your and my lifetime, it'll become far more affordable.
Okay, so you're optimistic on that
Yeah.
space as well. Okay, last couple of questions and we'll start winding down. Since you meet a lot of entrepreneurs,
I have
you
a hard stop at 4. I just wanted to call that.
I have two more, last two questions and we close. These investors, the entrepreneurs that you end up meeting, have you seen a shift in, the kind of entrepreneurs you were talking to maybe 5 or 10 years ago, and what you're seeing now? Is there a generational shift that you're seeing coming through, and what are some of the qualities of this new workforce, new entrepreneurs that are coming in?
So I think the biggest shift we are seeing is a lot of entrepreneurs today are far more fearless, self-assured, and the acceptability of risk is very high.
Hmm.
This has happened because of a couple of things. There are many second-time entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
There are also CXOs who've seen wealth creation, impact creation, working in CXO positions at startups. Uh, and that crop is now out in the market building their own companies. So today's entrepreneurs compared to 10 years ago are far more, they have global ambitions. They are far more resilient. They are also far more fearless and optimistic. They know that uh, if this doesn't work, they can do something else or build another company. So delayed gratification is something which really didn't exist in India. So I think understanding and appreciation of that is coming in.
Hmm. Okay, so you're seeing more risk taking, just more willingness to
Also fearless people. So Sneh,
fearless.
who's the founder of Miko, has built a global robotics, uh, you know, incredible company which provides AI-based robots for child companions,
Hmm.
as child companions,
Okay.
right? So you're seeing both founders building for Bharat and from Bharat for the world,
Hmm.
and the world is their playground. Many
Okay.
companies going global, yeah.
Okay. And with this sort of landscape, there was a lot of talk about the gig economy, a lot of talk about work from home, etc. And then there's a lot of backlash. In the interviews, I'm getting both flavors. Companies saying like we're done with this work from home, we want everyone back, and companies saying, hey, we're okay, we're flexible, we're happy to work either way. What are you seeing on the ground? What is your take on this work from home versus office spaces?
I think we should uh, be mindful of what business are we in.
Hmm.
If you're a healthcare professional, maybe it is required for you to be in. the hospital or primary or tertiary care clinic. Uh, I would imagine it's very hard to do everything remote. Uh, and people should find a balance. I think it should be WFX, work from anywhere. So
Hmm.
if it is required by the company, uh, because every company is at a different stage and
Hmm.
what they are building. I think if it is required and you buy into the founder's vision, employees should be in office. If you're a more scaled company, perhaps you can get more flexibility. Some days you can work out of home.
Hmm.
There are also specialized skills which might not be available everywhere.
Hmm.
So some companies today have, people who are working on data and AI spread across the globe wherever the skill might be available.
Hmm.
Uh, Telemedicine is a great example. If you consult a doctor, they might not be in the same vicinity or clinic.
Sure.
So I think people are finding an equilibrium. Companies are also becoming more compassionate.
Hmm.
And they're also realizing that the best solution is a solution which meets the needs of both the employee and the organization.
Hmm. Okay, fine. So you're saying this are very sector dependent and very
Sector dependent, stage dependent. Are you early stage, late stage? Are you building something which requires you to be there in person versus remote? Like imagine a farmer, you necessarily can't be remote.
sure. Okay, great. Okay,
In
let's.
fact, I would say the discussion around work from home is dying down. Like it's almost.
Well, it's still around. I mean, I'm still hearing from companies that actually went work from home who are now saying we're trying to bring people back, and that conversation isn't going down with their employees because now people have set up lives in other places, they bought homes, given up their primary homes, etc. So people have taken pretty quantum dramatic leaps, and the companies are like, "Hey, you got to just come back to work. Maybe we'll go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or whatever, but you got to come into work." So now it's sort of that reversing of a previous policy, which
I
had
don't see this in the digital economy. Maybe these are larger companies. Uh, I don't see this in startups, and it's a non conversation. It was happening a year, 2 years ago,
Hmm.
but it's a very even keel now.
Hmm. Okay, great. Okay, last question, and we'll close. I'm always trying to ask people, what could go right and what could go wrong. So, as in sort of donning your futuristic hat, is there a gloom day scenario and a boom day scenario that comes to you saying, hey, if we do it right, then this is where we could be, and if we don't, then this is where we could be. What is sort of like two ends of the spectrum?
I'm an eternal optimist, so I only have a bright, optimistic view of the world. I
Okay.
think I think we will see more human tech combinations. So Neuralink is a great example of what Elon Musk is building. Uh, I think tech will help humans lead more fulfilling lives, do less of mundane, uh, do more creative stuff, unlock their potential. I think people will have access to better medicines, healthcare, education, uh, instruments to save, protect their families, accessibility, whether it's accessibility through physical infrastructure like roadway, or even safety through satellites, weather flood forecasting, uh, simple things like using AI to automate traffic signals so that traffic jams go down. Uh, I fundamentally believe that we are a better society, more resilient society uh, than far earlier. Like typical medicine cycle to develop vaccines was 10 to 20 years. When COVID happened, we could quickly collaborate, come together in few months to create vaccines.
Mhm.
So I
Okay.
think the best is yet to come.
Okay, fine. Okay, so sounds like you're an eternal optimist, and obviously because you do have a belly up understanding of what is going on, given the vast amount of
Yeah.
exposure. I'm hoping what you say rings true, and I hope that we all live in a world that is far more enhanced that we have ever seen. Thank you, Apurva, for these
Thank
amazing
you so much,
insights.
Vibha.
You truly have the benefit of the ability to see a lot of things, and then the benefit of a very sharp mind that's able to see through the clutter and in such a short time explain the world so clearly to all of us. Thank you so much for doing this. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Vibha. See you.